No bloco de notas de hoje, nós continuamos a série em parceria com a Escola de Verão em Química da UFSCar, que em 2020 chega à sua 40ª edição, em que nós entrevistamos os convidados internacionais do evento. Nossa convidada hoje é a professora Deborah Kays, da University of Nottingham, no Reino Unido. Professor, thank you very much for being here with us. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, actually.
You've received in 2018 the Chemistry of Transition Metals Award from the Royal Society of Chemistry. So to begin with, I would like you to tell us what's so special about transition metals that they even deserve a prize of their own.
Well, I guess the transition metals themselves, I mean, they appear in the middle of the periodic table. I guess what's so interesting and why it's just such a broad chemistry with the transition metals. I mean, I'm an organometallic chemist, so that's my area of interest. But you can use transition metals. They bind so many, or they make bonds to so many, atoms and elements that they have such a varied chemistry. You can use them for in catalyzing chemical reactions, reacting with small molecules, things like magnetism. Just because they've got these unpaired electrons often. They can vary their what we call their oxidation states. They can take part in kind of supramolecular molecules. You can, as I said, you can oxidize them, you can reduce them. You just do so many things with them. I think that's why they've got such a rich chemistry. They deserve their own award.
And there are a lot of elements.
Yeah.
There is a variety.
Yeah,
too.
in the D block, and then actually from one end of the D block where they haven't got many D electrons to the other end of the D block where they've obviously got full D shells, as we would say, then that makes a huge difference to the chemistry as well. So I think as you go across the transition metals, you can have such a huge variety of chemistry.
And you've talked about catalysis, and here at the summer school you will give a course and make a lecture about it. So I would like you now, I know it may sound very obvious, but probably not to our public, and at least not for me. So I would like you to make an effort of explaining what is catalysis and what's the role of catalysis in chemistry, because I hear a lot about it. People talking that they are trying to, for example, to develop new catalysts, new materials, but it's not clear to me. Okay, catalysis, I've learned it at school, but I can't really see, I think, why is it so important, and why is the role of catalysis in chemistry or in chemical process?
Okay, so what catalysis does is it accelerates chemical reactions. Sometimes reactions can be quite slow, so what we can do is we can make them faster. But catalysts themselves, I think catalysis is involved in something like 90% of chemical production. So somewhere along the line of producing a new chemical, 90% of those new chemicals will need some catalytic step as they go.
But only to make it faster, or to happen?
Well, reactions. So thermodynamically, if a reaction will go, it will go. But sometimes kinetically, they can be very slow, that they wouldn't go, if you like. So what we're doing is we are offering a different way of getting to the product that allows it to happen. Catalysis is used in as I said, 90% of the chemicals you use. So things like making, hydroformylation makes aldehydes, which you can use to make detergents, and other things like that. CH activation chemistry is particularly interesting at the moment. So that's actually trying to make new molecules from kind of more simple starting materials, if you like. Cutting out steps of reactions is also important. So if we can make a catalyst to go straight from one thing, or one compound to the other compound, then we make cheaper chemicals for people to use as well. So it's absolutely everywhere. So there have been, over the last kind of decade, I guess, too long now. Over the last 20 years, there have been at least 2 Nobel Prizes awarded to catalysis because of the usefulness of these reactions. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry, these are compounds usually made in quite small amounts. But because they are such kind of complicated molecules, often we will use catalysis. For example, the Nobel Prize for carbon-carbon coupling reactions, which was within the last 10 years. Equally, for a catalyst, sometimes you can make one product over another product. So, for example, and this is important for enantioselective catalysis, for example. So compounds in biology can have, or in your body, for example, can often have two hands. Okay, we call them chiral molecules, and you can't superimpose them on each other. Okay, because your hands, you can't do that. So maybe we want one chiral molecule over the other, because one hand will work in a drug, and the other hand actually might be not good for you in a drug. So actually to produce things very selectively, I think that's where catalysis really comes into its own.
And I have the feeling, or I read a lot about, okay, they are searching, that this research is looking for a new catalyst or a better catalyst. Why is it still necessary to develop new catalysts?
Well, I think because what we do is we realise that things like CH activation is still, well, it's been going a while now, but still a fairly new field, and new developments are coming all the time. So maybe we can activate, or we can do catalysis with a particular kind of bond, for example, a CH bond, that we couldn't before. Okay, so they're always, I guess, it's always baby steps. It's always small steps, but these small steps actually can make big differences for the compounds that we can make, and I guess things like saving industry money, which saves the consumer money. Things like that are actually really, really important. And the development of new catalysts, can give you new things that you'd never made before, basically.
And while I was preparing myself to this interview, I've read that you are looking after compounds able to effect chemical transformations which were never seen before.
Yeah.
What studies are these, and of what transformations we are talking about?
Okay. So I mean, one which was particularly fun, but was a lot of hard work, was we've done some reactions with carbon monoxide, and carbon monoxide. The bond strength in carbon monoxide is the strongest bond known, that carbon-oxygen bond between in carbon monoxide. It's very, very hard to break. It's done heterogeneously a lot of the time in industry. Okay, so they can do it on surfaces, but heterogeneous catalysis, it's great heterogeneous catalysis, but it's often not selective. What we can do is we can take our molecules, so our low coordinate complexes that we make, and we can actually break that carbon-oxygen bond and use it to actually make sort of squarings, so square molecules. All of the inside of that is formed from breaking this carbon-oxygen bond, which is really challenging. So I guess that's why I like doing it, is the challenge of doing stuff that's not easy, I guess. We can also do catalysis, so we can catalyze chemical reactions. And recently we made some new phosphenodicarboxamides from this kind of what we call the dye insertion. That's effectively what it was. But we can couple together these compounds called isocyanates, which are used in the making of polymers and things like that. And we can couple those together and put phosphines on to make a new family of compounds.
Mm-hmm. And here at the summer school, you will give a course about organometallic complexes. And there's applications. What are they, and what are they good for?
Okay, so organometallic complexes are compounds with metal-carbon bonds. That's basically it. They have certain rules which apply to them, which kind of normal coordination complexes don't have. What are they used for? Well, actually, so a lot of the catalysts that you use in industry are these organometallic complexes. So things like, I should have mentioned before, actually, so things like what we call olefin polymerization. So it's polymerizing alkenes. And so the plastics in the cameras, you use probably are polyalkenes. Made through this olefin polymerization chemistry, and particularly things like that, for example, and I talked about that in my course yesterday, things like that are made using these compounds with metal-carbon bonds. These are early transition metals with metal-carbon bonds. And
your lecture will be about small molecules activation.
My plenary will be about using these low coordinate complexes, so I'll talk about catalysis, and I'll talk about them in small molecule activation. So these low coordinate complexes that we make, the reason I like making them, I think I've said challenge already, is the challenge, because they're incredibly reactive. Because they are so low coordinate, we use bulky ligands, so that's bulky carbon groups, okay, and so we have one there, and we have one on the top. and the metal kind of sits in between and it's kind of protected, so it doesn't want to react with much. But that said, our compounds react with oxygen, so we have to keep them under an inert atmosphere. So that's usually argon gas or nitrogen gas. So there are challenges to making these compounds. But because they're so reactive, they can react with these small molecules, such as carbon monoxide. We'd like to look at things like carbon dioxide activation, because obviously that's useful for turning carbon dioxide waste, for example. If you could do that, into useful molecules, that kind of thing. But other small molecules you could think of would be things like dihydrogen, ammonia, things like that, and seeing how you can activate them and turn them into other useful compounds.
Okay, now I have one last question, which I'm asking your colleagues too, and that's how have you first met science, and how have you turned to be a scientist, and also what inspires, and you've talked about the challenge, is that what challenges you through your workday?
Okay, so I'm going to sound like the biggest geek in the world. So when I was I remember, I've got to be about 8 or 9 years old, I don't know. When I was a child, I was given an encyclopedia. And I shouldn't say this on, I spent quite a lot of time copying out the periodic table. Because I was fascinated. I don't know why, but the kind of whole order of the thing. But I remember in this book, so it was some sort of junior illustrated encyclopedia or something, I think it was called. But inside the book, so they had 2 pages, only 2 pages on chemistry. They had the periodic table, which is what fascinated me. But they had a picture of a guy, it was all drawn, it was like a cartoon, a picture of a guy in kind of full sort of, we call PPE, protective equipment, right? Because there was a pipe with chlorine gas coming out of it. It's horrible, yellowish gas, really poisonous, right? It kills people. And then next to it was a picture of sodium in water. Sort of fizzing away. Again, all drawn. It was all, someone had drawn this artistically. And the fascinating thing was they had those, and then they had a picture of table salt. And so you take chlorine, and you take sodium, right? Horrible things by themselves. Sodium gives the chlorine an electron, it makes salt, and you put it, I'm British, you put it on your fish and chips, right? So yeah, that was crazy. And I just thought, that sounds like something I want to do. Maybe blowing things up as well. But yeah, that's the kind of thing, that's what got me into it. I guess what kind of drives me, I don't know, I'm going to sound like Star Trek now. It's a search for new things, I guess, making these new compounds, kind of rise into these challenges, but also having a really great research group as well, these enthusiastic students, and I really like to talk to them about the chemistry and see their enthusiasm too.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Esse foi mais bloco de notas. Quem se interessar pelo trabalho da professora Débora, é só visitar o site do grupo de pesquisa. E a gente se vê no próximo bloco de notas.